Okay, AP students, period 4. I know I said you're off the hook for new work until April 3rd when we make a decision on how review is going to look, but for many of you that didn't do the African responses to Imperialism DBQ, I said I would make a video to help walk through the steps. I only have 15 minutes of free recording on this program, so I'm going to try to go as fast as possible. If you have the documents, great. Hopefully they're still annotated and I have that part already done. If not, you can go into OneNote, and if you go into the Writing tab, all the way down at the bottom, if page 18 is still all the way separated like this into multiple pages, just make sure you go all the way down to the bottom where it says page 19 African responses. Now you could either just work right off of here, or you can click on the Word link and it'll open up in Microsoft Word. Anyway, so with DBQs, really, guys, what you're looking at is when the people create these things, the DBQ creators, they make them in a way that the documents are supposed to connect together. They choose specific resources and documents that say, oh, these documents clearly support a similar argument. It doesn't have to be identical, but similar. Maybe they're both political reasons, or maybe they're both economic or both environmental. Your job is to find those similarities between documents, and that becomes your argument. And it's just like a historical puzzle. It's a jigsaw puzzle. You got to find the documents that go together. And then you also have to, now there's all these other skills that we've been talking about, like hipping documents and looking at point of view and trying to determine how that influences the meaning of the document. But for our purposes, if you're struggling with the DBQ, really the skills that you need to practice are this: making sure you know how to write a thesis and that you can use evidence, right, to make an argument. So really, those are the two things you're trying to do. Can you come up with an argument, that's your thesis, that responds to the prompt, and then can you use evidence to support it? That's it. All right, the answer's in the document. So for this particular DBQ, the question was, evaluate the extent to which Africans resisted European colonization and imperialism from 1884 into the early 1900s. So again, it's asking you to evaluate it. Were they successful in doing it? Did they aggressively resist? Did they not resist at all? You have to evaluate. You have to put your opinion on it, right? So evaluate means tell me the strength to which they resisted. So that leaves it open to interpretation, and it leaves it open to saying, in some ways they did resist, but in some ways they didn't. So you have to find out how they resisted. So you're looking for how they resisted these historical processes. So we know that imperialism and colonization happened within the big context of the Industrial Revolution, as European countries were on the move around the globe looking for cheap resources and cheap labor. I mean, that's it. I mean, it's not too much of a story we don't tell over and over again in history. Humans exploiting other humans for their benefit. And that's what's happening here. And in Africa, the Europeans had superior technology militarily that allowed them to go in and pretty easily take over. So the question you have to keep in the back of your mind the whole time is, how does this document an example of resistance? And then try to evaluate it or measure the degree of resistance. So we're not gonna, for this part, we're not gonna get into much to like sourcing the document, because that more leads into hipping. We just want to make sure we understand the main idea of each document. But it's still a good idea to read the source line. So here we have a document that is a Royal Niger Company, which is, again, you should know, hopefully, that triggers you to think, okay, this is some kind of private trading company, a joint stock company. So now we know that there is corporations from Britain that have an interest in developing the Niger River Delta, right? Which is a nice way of saying they want to go in and build roads and railroads and get their resources. Right? So this is a contract. It is a standard form, just like we would see today, where you sign a contract for a mortgage or a car loan, where there's blank lines and you initial it. So essentially, they went into Africa and it said, "We, the undersigned chiefs of fill in the blank of this village or area, with the view to bettering our country and people, do this day cede," which means give up, "to this private company the whole of our territory extending from," name how much territory you're going to give up, how many miles, from this river to that river, however it's going to be. And notice that this is written from the British perspective, that the view is that this is somehow going to improve their country. And that's how the British presented this. We are going to come in, we're going to help you modernize and industrialize. However, not to be too much of a pessimist, but they probably weren't being completely forthright in their intentions, and the whole goal was probably to exploit, or at least somehow trick the Africans into giving up more land, or thinking this was more beneficial than it was going to be. They made the chiefs pledge they wouldn't start wars because wars interrupt trade. The Royal Niger Company binds themselves not to interfere with native laws. So, of course, they said we will respect your culture. Again, missionaries lots of times followed in after trading companies and tried to convert. So that probably wasn't always consistently true as well. And then at the very end, it says, "We agree to pay the owners of a land a reasonable amount for portion they may require." Now, this is where it's a little tricky because different cultures have different understandings of what it means to own land. And then you have to ask, well, who owns the land? It's not the lower class in the hierarchy. It's the chiefs or the upper class, the nobles, however African, each society had their social structure. So again, it's really the chiefs and the upper class who are going to benefit from this. Okay, and then of course you sign your initials, and the land is now England's. So really what you have to do, you have to go through each document, annotate it, and understand the document. And really, if nothing else, if you can just write a quick main idea summary, right, that the British used private trading companies to make contracts probably all over various African groups that exchanged African land and resources for an undisclosed amount of money. Now that's the main idea. That is what this document is. It tells you that there's a contract. It was made by a private trading company. Various African groups signed it, and in exchange the land and resources in that land for some amount of money. Now, if you want to add your own other, your own opinion or inferences on top of that, that's where you're getting into interpretation and argument development. If you want to add things like promised they would respect African culture, however, missionaries frequently followed intent to convert. Now, if you're going to write things like that, now that's not in the document. That's you making inferences and drawing in your historical knowledge, which is a good thing to do as you go along. I just spent a lot of time on one document, going through how to annotate, try to find main idea. Your goal from here is, as you move from document to document, is can you find connections. Can you connect this argument to similar arguments in other documents? So I guess at this point it'd be good to stop and, well, how does this document answer the question? How does this show resistance? Or did it show resistance? And I would say in this case, the resistance, I would classify it as, if you're going to answer the question, does this show resistance? Well, not really. It shows compliance. Not really. The chiefs that signed this document showed compliance with European demand. So essentially, resistance on this one, if you had to evaluate, was very low. Now, so your job now is to see, is there any other documents that support very low resistance or some form of passive resistance or compliance? And that is the goal. Find the connections. So moving on to document 2. Here we have, I'm probably going to say the name wrong, Prempeh the first, an Ashanti leader. This is a response to a British offer of protectorate status in West Africa. Now, very similar to document 1, here we have the British. And this time, instead of a private trading company, it's the British government asking, hey, do you want to be part of our empire? And in exchange, we will provide you some benefits politically, economically, of being part of our empire. And again, really, it's just a way to get in and start controlling them from the inside, but doing it in a diplomatic way. If you don't know what diplomacy means, it means trying to use your political power or advantage over another country, but in a using treaties and making friends instead of enemies. So that's diplomacy, is trying to make compromises. But usually one group in a diplomatic arrangement has the upper hand when the arrangements are made. So here we have you have this royal person responding. So, you know, only people that are royalty get Roman numerals in their names. We know this is royalty. This is a response to that offer. Okay, so the suggestion that the Ashanti in its present state should come and enjoy the protection of Her Majesty, the Queen of England and Empress of India, is a matter of very serious consideration. I am pleased to announce that we have arrived at the conclusion that my kingdom of Ashanti will never commit itself to any such policy. Ashanti must remain, as of old, at this time, remain friendly with all white men. So, this one's pretty straightforward. Thanks for the offer. Thanks, but no thanks. We like our freedom. Now, this is just how my brain works. We like our freedom and independence. You have to be a little bit more historical than that when you go to write your argument. But that's the gist of the document. So if you had to do a main idea, you'd say the Ashanti people rejected the offer of protectorate status from England. Okay? Now they did it. Now you have to ask yourself, what was the level of resistance? In this case, it's not as passive as the first one. I mean, it's active resistance or saying no. But it is still, I guess, diplomatic resistance. I mean, I don't know how you want to, how you'd want it, political resistance. Okay, so there we go. That's document 2. All right, moving on to document 3. Now, I'm going to have to stop and do a part 2 on the videos because it only allows me 15 minutes. I'm at 14 minutes and 30 seconds. So I'm going to stop here, and I will start a new video shortly.